Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Green Wisdom Health Show. I'm Janet Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Lewis.
And we are here to answer the burning questions in your mind, which many of you have burned questions into ours this week. So thank you very much. So we have decided to make a show about stress-free eating. We received many questions on our Shooting Straight with Dr. Lewis Facebook page, where we asked you guys what you wanted to hear on a podcast. And many of you talked about diet plans, different kinds of diets, different kinds of probiotics, what's best to eat. Can you get stressed out from eating? Or maybe it stressed us out thinking about all the different eating. So we named this show Stress-Free Eating. And Dr. Lewis is going to explain the difference between the different diets, what he recommends that is his favorite, and educate you guys a little bit about a lot of different meal plans. So, Dr. Lewis, would you take it away and give us all your wisdom?
That puts me on the spot. Thank you. There are a lot of questions, which we'll get to in a little bit, and I really appreciate it. And to the new people that are listening, we appreciate that because there's so many of our people that are referring so that new people are listening to our podcast. And Janet and I are just like you. We like to be patted on the back and, recognized, appreciated, and approved of. And I was talking to Eileen and Jim in Las Vegas yesterday, and Jim just made my eyes leaky from some of the compliments he gave us. And, well, if you and your wife are getting better, thank you and God bless you. It's worth it because you talk nice. And then I heard from Jim from Washington just a few minutes later. I hadn't heard from him in a while. It's like, there's so many good people that realize the importance of helping others take a step up and a step out and have the courage to become healthy again. Health is very, very attainable. And the biggest struggle you'll ever have, I think, in your life, or one of the bigger struggles, is the struggle between knowing what to do and then doing what you know. So, we're here to encourage you to do that, maybe give you a little bit of knowledge. And as Jim from Vegas said, man, I like your sense of humor. It's kind of bizarre. It's like, yes, sir, it is. Convoluted, as Janet says. So here I go about diet. And some people, as Janet's already said it, sometimes I think stress and overdoing it perfectly is much, much worse than just eating the dadgum thing and enjoying it. That being said, there's I got a lot to say. It's all about intestinal inflammation and what causes intestinal inflammation, and it can be estrogen-like compounds from soy. If you don't have the proper intestinal bacteria, that's kind of a big deal, I think. One of my favorite ways I tell people to eat, I'm more of a primal paleo keto kind of guy. I think the high fat, as long as it's clean fat, is a good thing. There are some bad fats. And in every or almost every diet book I read, and I've read dozens and dozens and dozens, there's always something in the book that I do not agree with. And so, for example, there's this one diet book. It says healthy alternatives to saturated fat. Well, that in and of itself implies that saturated fat is bad. Saturated fat is not bad. It's hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated fat. That's the bad one. It says instead of eating butter on bread, you can eat olive oil on bread. And see, that's something I disagree with because, number one, olive oil is so fake, you don't know what's real and what's not. And I personally don't know the difference. I think you should eat lots and lots and lots of butter from grass-fed cows. I think bread is the problem, and they never raised that question, on this. And it says instead of Brazil nuts and macadamia nuts, you need to eat almonds. It's like, well, I've seen a lot of people that tested positive for almonds being inflammatory in their particular body, and Brazil nuts is probably the highest source of selenium that there is, so you need to eat them. And then it says cheese dip. You can substitute with avocado dip. I do agree avocado is probably better, just depending on the cheese. And it also said your typical commercial salad dressing is potentially bad, and a healthier alternative is homemade dressing with vinegar, olive oil, and spices. And I do agree with that. So that's why many times those of you that have heard us over and over again, you'll hear me say, listen with a discerning spirit, because although I do my best to be knowledgeable, thank you, Jim from Vegas, I still don't know everything either. Never will. The more I know, the more I realize that there's too much to know. I just got back from my dentist, and she says, I just can't believe that you can read this and put it all together. And da-da-da-da-da. And she said, you kept me in practice all these years. And it's like, well, it's structure and function. As a chiropractor, you look at it that way, and these nutrients, it's structure and function too. So you have to understand it's a myriad of different things. There's so many different facets to being healthy. Your intestines actually can alter and affect, in a good way, genetic expression. And one of the things is poor GI flora, that's bacteria or probiotics. And I'm going there because that's some of our questions that's coming up. But the poor GI flora can lead to poor DNA replication or cancer. You do have, I don't think we have control over our lives, but we have a great, great deal of influence. So when people say it runs in my family, it's like, well, why don't you stop it? You can. You can alter genetic expression. They say, well, it runs in my family. I say, well, I said, this is where it runs out in my family. And I've jumped out of all kinds of things that ran in the Lewis family, but it took a lot of work, and it was worth it. That's the key. And that's how it's very important for you to encourage other people to stay with the program. Yes, there's going to be setbacks, and yes, you're going to have this and this and this happen. All that's doing is testing your faith, and if you bail out quick, that just means you don't have your faith developed, and that's very incredibly important, that you have the faith and the courage to stick through the tough times. If I had stopped vacation the other day, the first time I ran over a curb with our RV, we wouldn't have gotten very far. So you don't stop when you get a little boo-boo. There's all sorts of evidence and research that says toxic intestinal bacteria can produce something called interleukins, which is another form of inflammatory chemicals. So toxic intestinal bacteria means you have to replace with the probiotics. And I'm still working on the kombucha that, we had that podcast with John. He brought me some kombucha, and I actually made scobies out of straight Saccharomyces boulardii and from our probiotic Synergy. So this, talking about toxic intestinal bacteria, that particular research comes from Journal of Immunology and Free Radical Biological Medicine. So this is real research. This is not your typical Google search. There's a lot of opinions on there that is very, very skewed in the wrong direction. It's not fair and unbiased. The other thing is, with gut bacteria, you need to stay the heck away from sugar. And I read in another diet book that it's okay to do some sort of artificial sweetener. I think it was sucralose, and it's like, no, and heck no. But you've got to quit the stressing over trying to do it exactly correctly, because that's not exactly possible. Now, you want to do it as correctly as possible, but don't stress over being perfect, because being a perfectionist is not a good thing. So let's go back to, even though I have a tendency to go keto, paleo, primal, that's the healthiest diet for most people. Even, I don't care what your blood type is, yeah. There's a little validity to that book, but I don't think it's something you should hang your hat on. But you can vary, and you can do clean keto or dirty keto. Of course, clean is better, and that's eating the cleaner meats versus the other ones, and the same thing with the fats. But even within that context, the best thing you can do is do calorie restriction. It's very, very important. And there's been plenty of scientists that noticed when you would put certain animals, they use mice and rats. So they use that a lot. And they noticed when they started eating what we would consider a normal diet, the hair would turn gray and their hair would start falling out. Their bones would get brittle. They started moving more and more slowly, which would mean arthritis. And then they'd stop moving forever. So, we'll compare you to a mouse. Sorry. But when they put these groups on calorie restriction, cut the calories about in half, that most of the mice were dead, where the calorie restricted mice were still alive and very, very healthy and even still having babies. So be aware of that. Most diets, you've got to understand, have about 95% failure rate, or they will just go back to where they are and usually gain weight. So recidivism, I think, is the term for that. The reason I think it's very important for you to live long and live healthy is because it takes a dadgum long to learn how to live, and then if you die early, you didn't get to use that knowledge and wisdom. So that's one of my crazier motivations for that. And one of the big scientists that talked about living longer through calorie restriction, he didn't live that long. It's like, well, something's boo-boo there, but he may have lived longer than he would otherwise. So,
well, when you're talking about these different diets, isn't we never really tell people to get on a diet. I know we mentioned paleo sometimes, but isn't it more about just eating clean?
Yes.
Okay, and when you talk about eating clean, a lot of people don't know what clean eating really means. So maybe you could explain a little bit of that.
Okay, well, that's a good point. Instead of eating charred meats, and yeah, we love it grilled, but you don't want to char it. Instead of eating hot dogs, you can eat grass-fed beef instead of grain-fed beef. It makes a big difference. And, grass-fed lamb, although I'm not a big fan of lamb. Pasture-raised pork. Last year I didn't shoot any pigs. This year I think I'm going to go shoot a bunch because they're relatively organic, except for the ones that eat under our corn feeders. So that's a genetically modified product, but that's not, the greatest amount of their diet. Bison, venison. I quit killing deer about 16, 18 years ago. Elk is good. The ones that you can get away from the nitrates, and that's avoid the deli ham that's processed, avoid the hot dogs, avoid the conventional sausage. We have a butcher that'll make it up for us if we like. The conventionally made bacon, salami, pepperoni, oh man, that hurt. But it's better to eat cleaner and stay away from that, if that's what you're talking about, Janet. And eggs are the same way. Right,
and the good fats and staying away from the sugars and doing the whole grains, correct?
Well, yeah, and back a while back, I had a bunch of chickens, and of course I don't just get chickens that'll lay enough eggs for us. I get chickens that'll lay enough eggs for 10 or 12 families, because that's what I do. I overdo things. But the fat composition of a free-range chicken is much, much better, and it's got several times more vitamin E. It's got lower cholesterol, even though cholesterol is not a problem. It's got higher levels of omega-3s versus omega-6s, and that's one of the big issues, is we have too many omega-6s and not enough omega-3s, and that's why I've even got vegans and vegetarians that will take our fish oil, because they know the importance of the omega-3s. And I don't care how much flax you eat, you're not going to get enough omega-3s out of flaxseed, even though I still consume that too, but it's just not enough. You want it you got to watch these labels. So they'll say free range, and it's like, well, they may give a chicken, 1 or 2 square feet. You want them 100% pasture raised. So you watch the things. Janet was talking about clean eating. Let me name just a few things here. Enriched bleached wheat flour. Well, they spray that stuff with glyphosate. If it's not organic, you shouldn't consume it. I'm not a big fan of grains, and that's why you see so many vegans that are not healthy, because they eat a lot of grains. Corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, hydrogenated vegetable and or animal shortening, soybean, cottonseed, and or canola oil, and beef fat. Now, soybean, cottonseed, and canola, you need to stay the heck away from it. Canola's poison. Other things, soy protein isolate. Now, I've said many times, these supplement companies can isolate some really good products out of soy, but you don't want to eat the protein. Polysorbate 60, soy lecithin, soy flour, cornstarch, and that's from genetically modified stuff, cellulose gum, sodium stearoyl lactylate, natural and artificial flavors. Even though it says natural, many of the times it's something that's pretty nasty for you. Sorbic acid, then yellow number 5 and red number 40. Now, doesn't that sound like that's unclean eating?
That makes sense. So just because it's pretty doesn't mean it's good for you.
That list comes out of the Twinkies box.
So basically, when you're talking about clean eating, you want to eat foods that are basically as close to their natural state as possible. And by doing so, it will help decrease inflammation. It helps lower acidity, helps alkalize the body. It controls blood sugar levels, provides you optimum nutrients for what you're having. And then people say, well, I get tired of swallowing all these pills here. Well, that's why, because you're not getting optimum nutrients out of what you're eating. So the cleaner you eat, the less you have to take from us. Yay! Yeah,
to a point. But I hear people say, well, I did your stuff for 7 months, and I never felt so good in all of my life. And I said, well, why'd you quit? Again, the hardest part is doing what you know. And that's why it's good to have someone there that's encouraging them, like that sweet couple from Las Vegas. This guy was telling his wife what to do, and it's like he was making some really, really good choices. My question is, what fits you better, 30 minutes a day of exercise or feeling like holy heck and can't move and being dead 24 hours a day? I mean, think about it, folks.
Yeah, clean eating basically helps with food allergies, heart disease, cardiovascular issues, arthritis, digestive dysfunction, which is some of our question, insomnia, depression, and anxiety, and leaky gut syndrome, and basically all forms of chronic disease just by eating clean.
And I like giving supplements, and that's a good thing, but I tell people, if you're going to eat that junk, if you go through a drive-through window to get it, my supplements are not going to do nearly as much good as they should. The bad news in life is time flies, but the good news that most people never realize, the good news is you're the pilot. You can take it where you want, and that's why we've got a little product called Deeper Greens. It's got an incredibly high ORAC value. You just do a scoop of that. It's organic fruits and vegetables, and I think the ORAC value is 6,900, which is pretty incredibly high, if I remember right.
Yeah, that's all organic, so you don't have to worry about trying to go to the store and get really great stuff. So it's all there in a jar for you.
Yeah, still better to eat the vegetables and then throw a scoop of this in your drink in the morning.
And I want you to speak a little bit, as usual, we start running out of time and we've got some questions here. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about people that are so concerned, I think you touched on it a little bit, they become obsessive and unhealthy because it's a term called orthorexia, and it's a condition in which a clean eater takes things too far and starts experiencing high amounts of stress and preoccupation over his or her diet. Is that such a thing? Is that, do people really become that fixated on food quality and purity, and then what happens? Basically they get sick, I guess, because they can't eat anything.
Yeah, you're tied up in knots doing that. Now, I read all the research about how nasty our environment is, but you still have to eat. And we still eat conventionally raised chicken. Now, we go for the good stuff anytime we can. But it's like we just don't obsess about it because it's worse to stress about it than it is just to eat the thing and ask God to bless it and go on. So, yeah, people, you shouldn't be obsessed. You should be healthy and happy. And that's more a matter of how you think rather than anything else. So if life's not fun, you're doing it wrong. And life's supposed to be fun. And Janet and I have a rule that says if it's not a heck yeah, it's a heck no.
That's right.
Yeah, sorry.
So make sure we address our questions. And again, thank you so much for all the people that took time to actually write in and ask something.
Yeah, do it every week. I need the help.
And you guys that are new to the show, if you'll just ask to join Shootin' without an I in it, it's SHOOTN straight with Dr. Lewis on Facebook. He'll accept you as well, and you can read a lot of commentary and good questions and add your questions in to have them answered on the podcast. But Richard, who's one of our favorites, asked...
Yeah, he's touring the country in an RV.
That's why I like him. He's having fun. He's wondering what he might take for an antibiotic for a tooth infection. He has to take an antibiotic for a tooth infection. So he needs to know if he needs to stop taking his vitamins to do that and then restart. He needs a root canal. I'm sorry, Richard. That's always awful, but those things happen. So what does he need to do for that? Does he need to stop taking his vitamins, or does he need to just keep on?
Me being a chiropractor, I don't give advice on medicine. That's between your dentist or your MD. There's other things that help that are antimicrobial from our point, but you probably should listen to your dentist on that one. That'd be my suggestion. Some people have a tendency to stop their vitamins, though, and they stop it when they're sick and really need it. The only reason you should ever stop your vitamins is if you're getting something major done, because your doctor will say, well, it thins your blood, and that's true. You should listen to the surgeon. But the other thing is you can actually detox too fast. When my dentist was doing stuff on me, she says, man, I've given you enough to kill an elephant. And I said, well, give me a little bit more. I'm flinching. She says, I can't. And I thought, holy cow, I didn't stop my vitamins, so my liver's detoxing too fast, so the anesthesia did not work as well. So, yeah, if your doctor tells you to stop the vitamins, yes, absolutely do.
That's a good point. And Debbie asked what the best diet is for diverticulitis. I know part of this is clean eating, so what's the other part?
That's one of the things, Debbie, that you will get conflicting information on. The conventional wisdom is don't eat seeds and nuts and popcorn because the husk and kernels, and I think that's BS, and that stands for bacon sandwich. Clean bacon, though. I don't believe that, and then other people say eat a bland diet. Well, a bland diet is full of all kinds of stuff like wheat and flour, which gums up. I think that's worse. I think you should eat high amounts of low glycemic. That was one point I hadn't gotten to. Go low glycemic vegetables because of the high amounts of fiber and lots and lots and lots of water. And probiotics. We've got a new line that's absolutely kicking butt in a good way. I'm hearing good reports every day, literally, about the new different types of probiotics.
Yeah, I can't believe there's so many different probiotic types and the things that they do differently. I mean, it's amazing how many different forms there are and what they address. So we'll talk about more of those. Diane wants to know what the best diet and supplements are for heavy metals, specifically mercury and lead.
We have a lot of them out there that will do. I do like this one called Vital Detox because it has the cracked cell or broken cell wall chlorella. Then it has a patented thing, broccoli cinnolate, which is a broccoli extract, which helps with the environmental estrogen mimickers. And then it has a enzyme blend, and the enzymes are really, really good. I think Vital Detox is a good one, but the liposomal C is good. We have several that will help with the heavy metals.
Very good. Okay. And Penny would like to know what the best order to address issues is. Do you do digestion first, detox pathways, parasites, mold, heavy metals? What do you do first? Where do you start? Hey, you start with lab, right?
I think that's the smart way to do it. Digestion is almost always an issue, but if you increase proper digestion, you increase better elimination. The detox pathways, I look at the liver. I want the liver enzymes to be just near perfect, not too low, not too high. Although there's a lot of other detox pathways like the P450, which is greatly influenced by probiotics against parasites. As a chiropractor, I can't diagnose parasites, but if your eosinophils get very high and you have a bellyache like crazy, like the young lady from Alabama I talked to yesterday, she said, but I'm cramping. I said, yeah, but is your stomach better? She said, yeah. I said, that's your body trying to squeeze out something. When my eosinophils got up to 26, I passed a big ball of worms, and it's probably because I was, gutting a pig or, had chickens, who knows. We get these things, and if your digestion and hydrochloric acid is high enough, then it's going to eat the protein off yeast, fungus, virus, and parasites, and it'll be killed there rather than set up shop. So it varies a lot, Penny, as the order. It depends on the lab. And, she said mold, heavy metals. Just, there's two phases. One's detoxification, one's building. Usually we have to work on digestion and building, but it depends on the lab.
And you talk about lab. For those of you that are new to listening to our show, we do not your doctor's office 1 to 3 panels because their hands are tied lab. We do 12 panels. That's our comprehensive panel minimum, so that we're not guessing at what's going on with you. And that way we have a better picture of your overall health. It's not just, one panel here and go, oh, well, I wish saw the rest of that so I could really tell what was going on. We don't like guessing. So that's what makes us different than everyone else. We take the guesswork out by running a low-cost lab, and that way we know where to start. And the products that we give you based on that lab, we do it across the United States at your local Quest Diagnostics. And based on that lab, we know where to start. And because sometimes people want to detox just like that. It's like they think, well, I'll just start detoxing. Sometimes your body's so sick, it actually needs to be built first. And without proper lab, you don't really know where to start. So if you're new to this, go to our website, greenwisdomhealth.com, fill out the health survey, and that way Dr. Lewis can actually help you decide where to start, and you don't have to guess at that either.
Yeah, don't guess and don't do it on your own, because as smart as I think I am not smart enough to fix myself.
So thank you for that question, Penny. Kelly, I'm going to let Dr. Lewis read this because I don't know how to pronounce this, but he said, how do I make my gut a friendly place for...
Well, she's talking about something. Let's see if I can pronounce it. Akkermansia muciniphila.
To flourish. I got that part.
Yeah, that's, Kelly, that's a probiotic that is, they're talking about it. It gets in the mucin of the intestinal walls and helps you lose weight. I don't know. I don't have any experience for that. But the way to make your gut healthy is, first of all, clean it up, put a lot of fiber in. And people say, well, what about this and prebiotic? And it's like, yeah, okay, I know all about it. But just if you're eating the low glycemic vegetables, you have enough fiber for the bacteria to flourish, whether or not it's that or something else. We have something called ProBioLean, which is, I'm really proud that Janet found 60 capsules for a whole lot less than another one we were selling that had 30 capsules, which worked real well. And it's a probiotic blend, 25 billion CFUs, and it's got the Lactobacillus acidophilus, Plantarum, Rhamnosus, lactis, but then it's got the Glyceri, and that's one of the real big ones for weight loss. We've got a lot of people that are getting good results with that. So it's just probiotics that are pre-fed with the fiber.
So that would be a good one for Kelly to take to try to get that to flourish then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And we have one last question from Jason. Wants to know about using genetic testing to search for answers for chronic illness that haven't been fully resolved by diet, exercise, and supplements. What are your thoughts on that?
I tell everybody to go to 23andMe and utilize their services. We did 23andMe, then hired LiveWello to go, expound upon that. I think that's the best thing to do. I promise you, genetics is way the heck over my head. And it helps. It told me things that I kind of already knew. It said I was a low metabolizer or slow metabolizer of alcohol. So, hey, I figured that out when I was 19. I couldn't drink much. It said I got dementia in my future. So, well, look at my 95-year-old mama. You can figure that one out. But you can put that stuff off, because we took obvious signs of dementia when my mother was in her 60s, and it didn't really get super serious until about age 88 to 92, and after 92 it was terrible. But that helps you target what you need to deal with the supplements. And there's one other thing I'd like to address on this, and it's from Tom. Tom says, I want to be a guest and brag on you. It's like, well, Tom, come in anytime. We'll put you on.
I like that very much.
Oh, he's a sweetheart of a guy, and, he gets great results because what does he do? Follows instructions. But then when people at his church follows instructions, they get great results too. So, folks, hope you've learned a little bit. Hope you've laughed a little bit. Life can be healthy. You're going to pay a little bit to be healthy, or you're going to pay a whole lot to be diseased. So let's work on health, and it can be much, much better. And then you're going to bless everybody that's around you.
Keep those questions coming, folks, and please share our podcast with others if you've enjoyed it for yourself or you know someone that could benefit from it. And we'll be here next week on the Green Wisdom Health Show.
Once again, our show has come to an end, but your hope in your health is only beginning. If you or a loved one are in need of a different outcome and are waiting for a brighter future, take the first step and go to our website and fill out the health survey. Please don't keep us a secret. If you know someone that could benefit from this podcast, please share this show with your friends and family. You are only one step away from a life worth living.